Good day. In week one, we will be exploring together what the scriptures are. So, in this section of week one, you're going to study areas of Bible translation through the history. You'll walk away from this week knowing special terms such as word for word, essentially literal, or dynamic equivalent. In our churches, we often or even in our pastoral ministry, I remember in the past people ask me, well, why do you choose this translation over others? There are some churches that land on the KJV version or the King James version as the literal or only translation to use for Bible study. And then there are others who take more of a broad stance and use latitude in their ministry. And some might say, well, we like the essentially literal translation. So as you read Wegner's chapters 1 through 2, 8 and 10, you'll explore the theory behind Bible translation. You'll get a picture into the process that the committees used in their in determining the best quality translation that they wanted to present to the modern audience. Assignment 1 also allows you to explore those concepts such as the dynamic equivalent, essentially literal, and you're going to need to explain the definitions and why they are different from each other. You'll also trace the discussion on original documents. So what is an original document? What is a translation of a translation? What is a variant script? These are important terms within the concept of the history of translation. And so you'll want to touch on oral tradition and how did oral tradition impact or even impacts us today as we look at the modern text that we have in English. And then you'll want to explore other potential tensions that there are between the modern translations, how they differ between each other. When is it necessary for you and I to use those translations in our Bible studies, in our preaching? Should you refer to them? I think that would be a good practical question for you to think about as you read the various reading assignments for this class. You'll also fill out a chart for your assignment number 1, and there you'll pick the translation of your choice, then give the passage that you're looking at, and I list those in assignment 1, and then you want to give a brief observation of what you see between the different translation. And so that should wrap up your summary chart for that section for assignment 1. But you'll probably want to really focus more on some of the questions that the assignment asks, such as how detrimental is Bible translation? Do the variety of translations that we have in English impact the way we do ministry? I think as I think more about that could come about in our different denominations. And again, going back to that original statement that some churches land on certain translations, and maybe we've even caught ourselves saying to people, well, I use this because it has an accurate rendering from the Hebrew and Greek. And so you'll want to explore why you believe that translation is the most accurate. And one thing that you want to know in most of our English contemporary translation is that they have an introduction to your Bible. And in that introduction, the committee that was set up for that translation gives us a theory or a practice by which they went about their translation. And you might want to look at the ESV as a potential just to explore for yourself. In the opening introduction, they'll tell you that they're following the tradition of the King James Version, and they're going to tell you exactly what manuscripts they're going to refer to in their practices and in their rendering of certain textually critical areas that may go either or. And so when we explore textual criticism, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at manuscripts, variant texts, and how certain verses are rendered from one another, and how maybe one translation might render a verse in a certain way when another translation committee decides to go a different direction. So those are the things you want to look at from a textual criticism. Also note that within textual criticism, you have individuals who tend to be more liberal in their view of inerrancy, inspiration, and even illumination. And they'll see those important doctrinal truths as different and hold to them differently than maybe where Moody is at, or myself as a teacher and a professor at the school. So I hope that helps as you explore more of Lesson 1 and Week 1 in your self-paced class.